I'll answer the question. You want answers?
I think I'm entitled to.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and it's a big weekend at the box office for Valiant Comics and Sony Entertainment. Their big, franchise starter or supposed franchise starter, Bloodshot, came out starring Vin Diesel. It doesn't sound like things are going so well as far as box office projections. They are already low at 14 million to begin with. They've been downscaled to 10 million after the Thursday preview showings and whatnot. It sounds like it's going to be a bad weekend, and a lot of it has to do with the quality of the movie. And with me to talk about it today is Larry Bernard. You went and saw it already. What do you got to say about Bloodshot?
So the thing about Bloodshot is you remember Sam Raimi, right?
Absolutely. I love Sam Raimi. The Evil Dead trilogy is in my top 3 trilogies of all time. I like his work on Spider-Man.
Yeah,
He's brilliant.
Sam Raimi was the first guy to really do a good superhero movie. And Kevin Feige exists, right?
I think X-Men or Blade were before that.
Yeah, it's Zack Snyder, while his movies were kind of all over the place, he really did a refined superhero genre and kind of did concepts that refined the superhero genre. Right? Those are all people who've existed.
I'll debate you on Zack Snyder, but that's not what the video is about. I get what you're saying. Those were franchise started with the intention of growing an audience and adding more films.
So when you're making a superhero movie in 2016, should you make a movie following these successful examples? Or should you make it like you made a superhero movie in 1998, which would likely have starred Vin Diesel?
Well, yeah, I don't think you should do what was the Shaq movie? Steel. You shouldn't do that. You should definitely try and follow the Iron Man 2, Captain America model that was perfected by Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios.
Yeah, so the people at Sony and at the Chinese production company that made the Fast and the Furious thought, no, maybe we should make a movie like Steel instead. And that's why the movie kind of sort of doesn't work real well. I know somebody who is involved at some level of the production, and I'm not gonna blow up anything he may have said to me that may have been borderline crossing an NDA. But when I talked to him about it, I said, hey, Rye was set 2,000 years in the future of Bloodshot. Rye literally has the same stuff in him. And we also have XO, Man of War, an excellent intellectual property that should, in my opinion, have been what you started the Valiant universe off with. And this is all about high technology. Could you maybe have combined these 3 movies into a stream of thought? No, they never had that thought at all, whatsoever.
It sounds like they decided to make a straight, 90s generic action movie.
That is very much what happened. But they also didn't think about who their audience was. So, if you're somebody who's watching a Vin Diesel movie, do you think it's fair to say that you might have played a video game?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So if your main character has had his memory wiped and altered in the movie, and this isn't a spoiler for anybody because it was literally featured in the trailer, through computers and stuff like they do with computer animation and it's been of numerous plot video games, do you think that needs a little exposition or a lot of exposition for the audience?
Well, depending on how you represent it visually, it probably doesn't need any exposition. They can probably figure it out. They've been playing video games. Right.
Unfortunately, nobody involved in the production had that thought, so we have a lot of exposition.
So there's a lot of just dialogue dumps of where we are and where we're going.
Yeah, and instead of taking the interesting concept of a conflict between a man who believes that humanity is all about living in the moment and doing whatever, whenever, and a man who wants to, perfect humanity through technology, and making that a strong ideological conflict that ties into the ideology of the violence that's going on in Bloodshot, they just only reference that in one scene as an info dump with Vin Diesel yelling, because yelling equals emotions.
He doesn't have the widest range of emotion for a character actor. That's
he has done 2 very good movies as an actor. He was in Saving Private Ryan. He was very good in that. And then there was a movie called Knockaround Boys, where he and a bunch of other young actors were all playing sons of mobsters.
Yeah, I remember that. That's a good movie.
And then he's done lots of bad movies. And he did a couple of good movies with Pitch Black.
I like Pitch Black a lot.
And the first Triple X was good because they kind of had the right vibe with that movie. But most of what Vin Diesel has done has been like the Fast and the Furious movies.
Or The Pacifier.
Yeah.
It's garbage.
Yeah. So that's the whole thing about that. So his character is generic American soldier guy who has been turned into a weapon of vengeance by the RST Corporation. And the head of the RST Corporation is trying to kill everybody else who's involved in the project that made Bloodshot, so that only he can make it and sell it to all the world's governments.
Oh, so it's the capitalists are evil and they're trying to make loads of money kind of thing.
And they have and they have an interesting subplot involving wounded warriors in there. So instead of having a moment where you develop these other soldiers that have been turned into cyborg weapons, they just say, "Oh yeah, look at all these soldiers we turned into cyborg weapons."
Yeah, that seems like a lot of some of the parts of the first two Iron Man movie, right?
Yep. And the CGI looks like something you might have seen in your PlayStation 3.
That's too bad because really the look of Bloodshot is what really separates him from a lot of comic book characters. Is that really weird white skin with the red eyes and the red logo on his chest.
And that in the red logo, the red eyes are the nanites overclocking themselves in this movie. As I said in my review that I did on my channel last night, when we're taping this, this is the least convincing role that Vin Diesel played a block of wood in.
Is it really that flat? It's
that flat. The only actress who did really good was the actress who played the female protagonist. She had an interesting plot moment because the villain controlled her ability to breathe until she killed him. But everybody else was just like, "We're here to get a paycheck, man."
So she was a telekinetic?
No. She just had a breathing apparatus that allowed her to breathe without breathing.
Oh, okay. Because I thought maybe she was a psyot, and I was like, I thought Harbinger Wars was a different production company. That's why they couldn't have a full up Valiant universe because they didn't have the rights to those characters.
Yeah, the Harbinger fell into Paramount, but quite honestly, like I said, if you just get Exo, Rye, and Bloodshot, you can build a cornerstone of the comic book universe for movies out of that.
Absolutely. The MCU was created without the X-Men, and which is basically what Harbinger and the Psyops are. They're just mutants.
Yeah. And the only thing about the Harbingers that I always found when I read Valiant super compelling was Hayata as the antagonist, but also the anti-villain antagonist.
He's absolutely one of the more fully fleshed out villain characters that you'll find in all of comics, and he's really compelling. And I do agree with Toya Harada is an amazing character. It's too bad we didn't see him in this movie.
So that's the basic bones of a Bloodshot review. And when we tried to do a recording of this earlier, real life got in the way. You were mentioning what your experiences because you were more into Bloodshot. I was more into other elements of the Valiant universe. You said Bloodshot was kind of like a Dr. Manhattan character.
Yeah, he's kind of like Dr. Manhattan in the fact that he's no longer human, but he has an essence, or he remembers a bit about his humanity before he was changed. But he's severely powered down. He's not like a god like Dr. Manhattan, but he's also very bloodthirsty, and he takes no prisoners. And his story arc, or his character struggle that Bloodshot goes through, is if he's no longer human, why should he care about humanity? What is going to connect him to humanity once he realizes that all these false memories have been implanted into his brain, and he's basically been manipulated by a rising spirit to go out and like murder all their enemies and things, and he finds out he's been played, and what is going to stop him from just killing everybody? Because, he can do that, and he kind of wants to, but what can actually hold him back from doing that? And interestingly enough, Dr. Manhattan and the Watchmen, he he walks away from humanity and gives up on it. It's kind of one of the reasons Ozymandias is successful in the end. But Bloodshot, in his character story arc, at least in the comic book, he doesn't turn away from humanity. He somewhat embraces it and tries to become more human again, or have a human experience. That's why I thought he's an interesting character. Not the character I would have started a Valiant cinematic universe, but certainly a compelling character that probably should have drawn people in there. That's a real struggle.
Yeah, and here's what I also think. Excluding I think if the trailers didn't reveal basically 95% of the movie, more people would probably have been interested in seeing it. They would still walk away saying, that wasn't very good, but they at least had some ideas here.
That's one of the problems with production companies and marketing companies so much. They're so scared that they're not going to tell you every reason that you should go to the theater, that, if they don't tell you every reason that you won't go, that they just give it all out there. I remember they even give away the big reveals in the third acts of movies nowadays. And it's really frustrating. It's like, why should I even go to this if I know what's going to happen?
Yeah, normally that's not a problem for me, but in this movie, it really was, because I was thinking about it, because there's not a whole lot going on in this movie. I'm saying I would have enjoyed this more if I didn't know literally everything that was going to happen before I walked in the door.
So, when you were walking out of the theater, there are other people there. I don't know if you went and saw it by yourself. I always went to the movies by myself when I was in the States. But was there a general consensus or a buzz from the other people that were in the theater, whether or not this was a good movie to them as well?
So a guy who had no idea this was a comic book movie ended up sitting one seat adjacent from me in the theater. And he liked it, and he was engaged enough that he wanted to explore the other comic book aspects of this. He just saw this on Vin Diesel's name alone. So there is that person out there, but there wasn't really a consensus about anything. The other element about this movie that's really disappointing, beyond the fact that they didn't make it like a 90s movie, everything was shot poorly, it looked ugly, that it was just badly thrown together and put together, is you don't really know why the villain is killing everybody else who's involved in making this project, beyond I just want to be the only one who knows how everything works, because he runs an advanced technology company. That motivation doesn't make any sense.
No, you would certainly need these people for research and development and other projects in the future.
Yeah. So the core villain motivation doesn't make any sense. And also, they go through 2 cycles of Bloodshot going through and killing the scientists. During the first one, and you see it in the trailer, they're in a tunnel, and there's a lot of flour that's packed into this tunnel. So you're from a farming state originally, and Jim on my show brought this up. What happens to flour when it's in a silo, loose and floating around?
You can die because of all the particles in the air.
Yeah, because the particles can ignite and explode. So in this movie, there's a scene where there's a whole bunch of grain floating around, and there are multiple road flares that have been lit up. There's a thermite device that's been planted on a car. And it's like, this whole tunnel should have just exploded. And then they also set off 2 grenades.
That's crazy. Did you ever see the movie American Assassin?
I think I did. It was a while ago.
It was the kid from the Maze Runner and Taylor Kitsch and
yes,
I think Michael Keaton. And at the very end, they're trying to get rid of this nuclear weapon, and the whole idea is we needed to get it underwater to neutralize it when it explodes. Well, if the guys that made that movie had done any research, the most powerful and destructive nuclear blast like you can do is underwater. It's more destructive than in the air or on the ground. I was like, "What? Don't do it underwater. You kill everybody."
Yeah. There's a little thing called Bikini Atoll. Maybe you can look up some of the excellent video footage of that on YouTube.
The most insane thing I've ever seen in my life. They did a few of them, but I was like, "Do some research."
So the script wasn't well thought out. This was also a first-time director in the movie. So a first-time director of the movie, the guy who made the script for Fantasy Island, which was mostly info dumps. So it was almost a perfect storm of everything terrible you could put into a movie.
Plus Vin Diesel in a lead role with that's not in Cars.
And honestly, in the Fast and the Furious movies, Vin Diesel's only watchable with other people around him.
Yeah, he's only there. You can only stand him when he was with his family. Like, I remember seeing the scene the first time he fights The Rock and like kicks his ass. I'm like, this is bullcrap. Like, no one believes this. Rock would throw him through a wall.
Yeah, exactly. And now he's going to be fighting John Cena.
Well, John Cena would throw him through a wall. Would throw him through 2 walls. Come on, you can't see me.
Yeah, so that's Bloodshot in a nutshell. And I was disappointed because when I heard they were going to actually release a Bloodshot movie, there'd been like 10 years they've been trying to get this done. And I was like saying, wouldn't it be funny if Valiant gets a successful comic book universe off the ground before DC?
Well, it doesn't seem like it's happened, but DC is on the precipice.
They're almost successful. They're trying really hard.
They need to get a crossover movie first, but Wonder Woman's established, Aquaman's established. Seems like that Joker Elseworlds world story is there. Shazam was certainly successful. They just need to get that first crossover movie that people like.
And honestly, I think they need to get Henry Cavill back to be Superman because after the success of the Witcher series, everybody's like saying, bruh, this man would have killed it as Superman if he had somebody not Zack Snyder directing and setting those movies up.
He was not the problem with the movies. Absolutely. He put everything he could into it. That's just, it was a bad interpretation of Superman as far as I'm concerned.
It's like, yeah, if they had made a Superman movie that was actually well written, that just relied on his skills as an actor, that would have been amazing.
Well, the big question is, I'm going to ask it to you. This will be the last question, before we end this talk about Bloodshot. And it sounds like it was very disappointing. Vin Diesel had stated recently that this will be the launch of the Valiant cinematic universe. Do you see that happening?
I think the only way I see that happening is if the Chinese production company behind the Fast and the Furious movies that makes it with Vin Diesel makes a very large profit on all the Modelo related tax write-offs that they get.
Yeah, but if it doesn't make money, do you think they're really going to go and put that much effort and time into making another one, or do you think they'll move on to another potential franchise?
Well, I think they'll fix it if they can get the government kickbacks to fix it with, from a profit and loss standpoint.
All right. Well, maybe it'll happen. I have severe doubts. It sounds like the audience doesn't like this movie. It's got some terrible ratings out there. Even the cinema score is bad. It
is. It really deserves to be rated badly. Mm-hmm. It's only something that I would recommend you go see if you're like me or Wes and say, man, I have fond thoughts about the Valiant universe. I'm kind of interested to see them attempt to put it on film. Because that was kind of why I watched Steel. I like going and said, hey, I think Shaquille O'Neal's kind of a charismatic and nice guy. And I vaguely liked Steel of the characters that came out of the death of Superman. Well, how could they ruin that as a movie? Well, apparently a lot of different ways.
This is not a thing about Steel. That was a bad movie. This isn't that bad, right?
No, it's not that bad.
Okay, good. It's hard to do that.
I mean, it's as bad as like the 1990s Captain America movie.
Okay, yeah, that's really bad still. Larry, I want to say thank you very much for joining the channel today, talking about Bloodshot, and I really appreciate it, buddy.
Thanks, man.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.